Players often like to debate about how strong a certain color is in any particular format. And in Commander, that debate is very challenging. Blue and black are easily the strongest colors, as they are in most Eternal formats. Blue has free interaction and card draw, black has rituals, tutors, and card draw. And as someone who is no longer a serious CEDH tournament grinder and just plays occasionally here and there, I'm not super qualified to say which of these two are stronger in the current meta. And of course, it fluctuates as new cards are printed and the meta changes. In casual EDH though, the debate is not even close. Green is and always has been the most powerful color in casual Commander. And I think you can easily build a mono green or green focused deck that will stomp through 90% of the pods at your LGS. Though I think that might change in the near future. Magic's 5 colors all have their own unique strengths, and in every format, a different color's unique strengths will shine through. I think it's important for each color to be able to do the game's core functions. Card draw, removal. Some colors get to be the best at these, with unrestricted abilities to do so. Blue has unrestricted card draw. White has unrestricted removal. But white has restrictions on card draw, like drawing a card when a low power creature comes into play, and maybe a once per turn on that. And then blue has restrictions on removal. Yes, a counterspell can hit anything, even instants and sorceries, but there's a timing restriction. If the card's already in play, your counterspell's basically worthless. And these core functions work well within the game. If white had unrestricted card draw, then the removal would feel very strong. And if blue could remove anything already on board, it would feel too strong because sneaking in something when they were tapped out becomes irrelevant, since they'll just draw into actual removal later. This is why cards like Rapid Hybridization are color pie breaks, and I'm not a huge fan of them, especially in blue because in theory you can bounce any permanent and then counter on the way down, which is very disadvantageous when it comes to cards, but is made up for because blue has the best card draw. This balance between what colors can and can't do is very interesting, and part of what I love about Magic. And then you get benefits for mixing and matching the colors. Having a blue and white deck gives you access to some of the best card draw and some of the best removal. So naturally, you'll find blue-white control commonly played in many formats because it makes sense, they go hand in hand. In recent years, Wizards has been trying to get every color more access to these core functions. With red, I think they've done a great job. Impulse Draw, which is the player-made term for exiling a card and then you have the ability to play it either this turn or till the next turn, is great. I love Impulse Draw for red. It lets you dig through your deck further for more cards, but you don't hold on to them and save them for later. It's very red in that sense. You gotta do it now, go crazy, play the card this turn. And also, I know Chaos Warp was originally considered a color pie break, but now we have some new random removal cards. And this also feels very red. You can deal with a permanent with a silly, goofy, random twist. With black, I think Wizards has done a bad job. Cards like Feed the Swarm and Withering Torment are both ways to destroy enchantments in mono black, which is dumb since mono black has been able to remove any type of card from the game for a while now. But just like blue, you have a timing restriction. You have to do it before they want to play the card. Black can literally look at an opponent's hand and yoink out their best card and throw it away. Cards like Thoughtseize can stop instants, sorceries, artifacts, enchantments. Plus, it's just as card efficient as a counterspell. I've always liked this unique way that black deals with non-creature permanents. And in my mono black decks in EDH, I would play cards like Mind Twist to use against an enchantment deck. But these new enchantment removal spells are just really boring, since it just makes black the same as white. It's just a sorcery that does the thing, instead of having the unique ability to discard be part of the equation. But there's one core function other than card draw and removal, which is seemingly locked away behind one color. Before I talk about that though, if you want to buy some cards, check out Cool Stuff Inc. If you use code TTM, you can get 5% off and it supports the channel. Thanks to Cool Stuff Inc. for sponsoring the video. Card draw and removal is important to any deck, but so is mana, and land ramp is firmly locked behind green. Yes, there are some colorless options, and white has catch-up ramp, but at least as of now, white doesn't really have much in the way of normal land ramp. And catch-up ramp is not nearly as powerful as the green turbo ramp engines you can build. Additional land drops or just freely ramping is a green only mechanic, and the colorless options are similar to removal. There are colorless alternatives to anything you need, but those options are usually slower or cost a little extra mana, which I think is fine, by the way. Another reason I just don't like these black enchantment removal spells is you could get rid of enchantments, you just had to pay a little extra mana for the upside of being mono black and getting to play triple and quad black cards. Anyway, different video. This is a good time to also double up on saying that this is about casual EDH. It is correct that the strongest ramp spells in the game are colorless fast mana cards, but these are really good for decks that need to hit enough mana to land their compact 1 or 2 card win con and just win the game instantly. And in competitive EDH, black or blue is easily the strongest color because you don't need green. You play the fast mana pieces to ramp into your ad nauseum, and that just wins the game by itself. You don't care as much about the long-term effects of card advantage and grinding out a game because you're not trying to do that. Or you're fast manaing into something like Heuristic Study and you don't care about the cards because it will get you the cards back. Most casual decks are not fast combo builds or are not looking to establish a turn 1 Mystic Remora with counterspell backup kind of board. Without those big I win buttons, Chrome Mox is not as useful in a random casual deck. This is why I don't play Chrome Mox in my Drago control deck. I'm not looking to play Sig on turn 1, doesn't really do anything, and I don't want to lose a real card in hand because I would rather have 2 cards to play. I'm not saying Chrome Mox or Fast Mana does not belong in any casual deck. I'm just saying you might really want that other card in hand, and it's not as useful as you might think it is. So with that said, in casual Commander, green generally has the best ramp in the game, and the colorless options are not particularly close. Yes, you can play 2 mana rocks, which are efficient, but most mana rocks lack raw mana advantage and utility that lands give you. The ability to play an extra land from hand every turn is a crazy powerful effect, which is strictly green. That's extra ramp every turn with no mana investment. And with fetches, crucible effects, you can really ramp this up and just keep cracking that same fetch over and over again and ramp a lot. And that ramp just gets better and better as more utility lands get printed and you can upgrade the power of each individual land. Plus, those lands in casual EDH are generally considered sacred. People normally don't play mass land destruction. It's considered taboo, which is fine, but in terms of what green does, it gives that color a massive advantage in casual EDH. You see, you can play cards that destroy all artifacts, destroy all creatures, destroy all enchantments, cards that do all of those things, cards that totally shut off counterspells, hose mill decks, or generally stop a plethora of other strategies. And it is simply expected that those players who are playing an enchantment deck will have to prepare for this. Perhaps you hold back an enchantment or two. Maybe you play some defensive spells or some other protective option to prepare for this very real board wipe that might happen. But realistically, you don't have to do the same thing about your lands. You never need to think, oh, I shouldn't ramp here because they're going to play an Armageddon, so I'll pause on my Cultivate. You don't have to worry about stuff like that. Whereas sometimes when I cast a Gilded Lotus, I might worry that it's going to be a complete waste if it's just going to get Vandal Blasted. Other than ramp, green also has the smallest restriction on their ability to do the other core functions. Black gets to draw cards if they sacrifice things or lose life. Red gets to draw cards if it's impulse, and they can remove things if someone gets something random in return. White gets cards on ETB or when a small creature comes into play, and blue gets counter spells which are powerful but have that timing restriction downside. Yet green can do anything as long as it just vaguely involves a creature. Disenchant? Well, it's on a dude, so that's fine. Board wipes? On a guy. Okie dokie. Card draw? Well, it's on a creature, so why not? Or the requirement might be tapping a creature, or having a high power creature, or having a lot of creatures. But do you see the issue here? Unlike the other colors that have timing restrictions, or you have to pay life, or you have to play small weak creatures, green's value is just it has to involve a creature, and is usually better if the creature is big or you have more of them. But having creatures on board, especially large creatures, isn't a downside. That's a benefit. Not only do big creatures protect you from being attacked, but it also lets you attack and win the game, which creates a feedback loop. You can ramp and commit to the board without losing it, unlike other colors that need to play artifacts. Play a big creature, which then opens up all your card draw, which lets you play more creatures, which opens more card draw, and so on and so forth. This is the only color where your restriction on the utility is a good thing, but it's even more than that in Casual Commander. Why is Green Ramp so powerful in EDH compared to other formats? We can look at these old classic cards like Kodama's Reach. It's not like this card saw play in Legacy or Modern, and that's because for most of the history of Eternal formats, ramp spells are considered to be pretty bad. The most impactful ramp deck in Modern was Tron, which is not green, and I guess Locust Lands, which they had some green stuff with them, but it's not like normal land ramp. Outside of Mana Dorks, these ramp spells are considered not very good, and the reason is taking off turn 3 or 4, or maybe both, to ramp is just a death sentence. As someone who's played Tron for many years, taking off turns 1 and 2 would sometimes lose me the game, because aggro can just steamroll you. But also, as a Tron player, against any controller mid-range deck, I would absolutely stomp them. Since the ramp deck always wins in the late game, you just play bigger threats. But in Commander, we don't really have fast aggro. Everyone is essentially mid-range or control, so the ramp deck doesn't have its natural predator. You can just ramp for the first... Oh my goodness, Jojo, buddy. You can just ramp for the first 6 turns, play 1 big creature, draw 8, and you're set for the rest of the game. And the card draw here is, frankly, absurd. Greater Good lets you freely dump your hand. With this in play and a full board, you essentially never run out of threats, because anytime someone tries to cast a board wipe, you just refill your hand, play all your threats again, and keep doing that until they run out of board wipes. Rishkar's expertise is just silly. I mean, it's effectively 1 mana, draw 4, 5, 6 cards. Last March of the Ents has the upside of being uncounterable, and lets you put all your creatures into play. Life's Legacy and Momentous Fall can be a one-time Greater Good effect, and even Soul's Majesty can work well. Genuinely, how can you lose if you're constantly drawing 10 cards every time someone tries to remove one of your threats? That's a rhetorical question, by the way. The answer is combo. Combo decks don't care about how many creatures you have, how many lands you ramped. They just win when they do their one thing. The problem is most casual EDH decks don't play combos. Or if they do, it's a random pile of cards in the deck and they can't find it consistently, because most casual decks also don't run tutors. This also contributes to how good green is, because combos are looked down on, tutors are shunned, and aggro is not particularly viable. Of course, you can just spend 5 turns ramping and spend the rest of your game casting monsters. Nobody's going to punish you. The very nature of casual EDH lends itself to this strategy. A slow build-up over time where nobody is taken out of the game too early, everyone wins with damage, no combos, and lands are indestructible. This all makes green better. Additionally, color fixing is so good in the format, since non-basic land hate is basically non-existent, and you have access to every good multicolored land ever printed. This leads us to the Simic problem. This is the strongest 2-color pair in casual EDH, by a wide margin. Remember way back when, earlier in this video, when I talked about blue being able to deal with anything, even though it might be card inefficient, like bouncing and countering on the way down, but this is countered by blue having card advantage. Well, that is good in theory, but obviously bottlenecked by mana, right? You need to draw the cards and also have the mana open to counter the spell at the correct time. As long as you have infinite cards in hand and infinite mana, a blue deck could, in theory, just stop anybody from doing anything. And surprise, surprise, guess what color gives you a lot of mana and cards? That wasn't rhetorical. If you could put your guesses in the comments below and submit your answer by subscribing, that'd be great. Okay, so let's build an unbeatable casual EDH deck. Pick any commander that has green in its color identity. Play a lot of lands. And I don't mean 36. That is the normal amount of lands you should be playing. I mean 40 plus. Play 15 ramp spells. Play every green draw based on power or toughness or big dudes you can. You want like 10 of these minimum. Fill your deck with creatures. The bigger the better. Make sure some of those creatures have utility on them. Add a bit of flavor from whatever secondary or tertiary, tertiary, what's the right word? Colors you are playing. Like Forbid, Torment of Hellfire, protection spells, or dragons, what utility does red give? And boom, you're done. I mean, maybe you tech in a few things for your local meta. Green does have access to every effect as long as it involves a creature, don't forget. And even if you do this on a budget and cut a lot of the more expensive creature bombs, you're still probably going to win, because all the ramp and most of the card draw is super budget friendly. And this is all you really need to win. The ramp and card draw are the most important parts. I promise you, you will win most games you resolve a draw 6 or more effect, and you should aim to do that every game. And perhaps the strangest phenomenon is that all this raw power does not seem to upset players. Looking at the saltiest cards on EDH Rec, outside of Nadu and Vorinclex, there's not many green cards. The One Ring is here, but why is Last March of the Ents not here? There are a few commanders who are up there, but not in the top 100 saltiest cards. And most of these ramp and draw spells I've talked about invalidate most casual EDH decks, since you just can't beat them, yet people are not salty about them? Maybe it's just me? Why is this uncounterable? This card's crazy, right? Am I tripping, or is Last March of the Ents just insane, right? Who made this? I used to play a lot of these decks. A lot of mono green Stompy, or just green X Stompy decks. Stompy being the catch-all term for mid-rangey, good stuff, big creature decks. All of these had the same big green draw effects in them. They all played the same. I would ignore 99% of what's going on in the game and just attack whoever had the most annoying utility creature. And in a pod with randos at most game stores, these decks crushed. And if you don't believe me, build an ultra budget mono green good stuff deck with 40 forests and see for yourself how strong Turbo Ramp is against random mid-range piles. If you do agree with me, what do you do about green Stompy? While the idea of non-green decks all running Winter Orb and Mana Rocks is interesting, this isn't a realistic plan. You're just going to get focused down by the rest of the table, and that doesn't help. A more reasonable idea is to simply attack the player relentlessly and try to get the rest of the table on board. When players all sit in their bubbles for 6 turns, not interacting, the player who ramped the most and drew the most cards probably wins that bubble war once turn 7 rolls around. So you should try to, early on, pop that bubble and attack. Feel free to take first blood. Politics with the table to attack Mr. Green over there. And I feel like the reluctancy of casual players to not attack someone who hasn't gotten to play, all their cards yet is sort of silly. I think at some point, if your deck doesn't commit to the board in any way until turn 8, that is partially on you for playing a really greedy deck. And it's part of the natural back and forth of the game that more aggressive decks can take you out before you get to do your thing. Green is such a strange color in Magic. Its core special feature has been mostly unusable in Eternal formats except Casual Commander. And it really only works there because of the social restrictions common in casual pods. But what do you think? Am I crazy? Is green really not as busted as I think it is? Let me know in the comments below. And let me know your experience playing green Stompy decks. Of course, everything I'm saying here is really just for these mid-range greedy piles. Your 5-color deck that has 3 green cards in it is not what I'm talking about. But seriously, let me know what you think. Special thanks to my patrons who make these videos possible. If you want to join the Discord or get in the credits, check out the link in the description below.